I thought I had it all figured out. At 24, I was set to marry Jake, the man I'd been with for 6 years. Jake was 25, and I genuinely believed he was my soulmate. Looking back, it almost feels ridiculous to think of how certain I was, how convinced that he and I were meant to be. It's strange how love can blind you, make you overlook things that, in hindsight, seem glaringly obvious. But I guess that's what happens when you're holding on to the dream of a perfect love story. We see what we want to see, right? We got engaged in April 2024. I was over the moon, floating on a cloud as I imagined our future together. I felt like I was finally stepping into the life I dreamed of. We set our wedding date for May the following year. It was supposed to be a special date, the anniversary of when we first met. I spent countless nights lying awake, thinking of our perfect day, of how Jake and I would pledge our love to each other in front of family and friends, and how, at last, I would become his wife. In July, we started planning the wedding. I was so excited. I decided on a light blue and white theme because I thought it would be beautiful and fresh for a spring wedding. I practically lived on Pinterest, scrolling through thousands of ideas, creating mood boards, envisioning every detail down to the flowers and table settings. I shared everything with Jake, hoping he'd be just as excited as I was, but his responses were always brief. A quick "looks good," or a "yeah, that's fine." I thought he was just letting me plan my dream wedding, that he was giving me control over the details as a way to show he cared. But now I know better. Now I realize he was probably discussing every single thing with his mom before even giving me the time of day. Here's the thing about Jake, he's an only child. At first, I thought that meant he'd be close to his mom, that he valued family, which I thought was a good sign. I never realized how close he actually was with her. Looking back, there were signs. He called her every day, sometimes more than once. He'd check in with her about everything, from what car he was thinking about buying to whether or not he should try a new recipe. His mom was involved in every decision, no matter how small. It started to bother me, but I brushed it off. I told myself that it was sweet, that it showed he was a caring person. I didn't realize that I was competing with his mother for his attention and, apparently, his loyalty. A few weeks ago, I went wedding dress shopping with my mom and sister. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I was giddy with excitement, envisioning myself as a bride, imagining Jake's face when he'd see me in my dream dress. We went from store to store, trying on different styles, and then, finally, I found a beautiful, elegant gown that made me feel like a princess. I felt so beautiful standing in front of the mirror with my mom and sister's proud smiles reflected back at me. I was on top of the world. I couldn't resist sharing the moment with Jake, so I sent him a picture of the dress. He responded quickly, telling me I looked stunning. My heart swelled with happiness, feeling like I had his support and excitement. But that's when things started to go wrong. Unbeknownst to me, Jake had immediately sent that picture to his mom. I'd barely made it home when I saw his mother waiting for me in our apartment. She was sitting on the couch, her face twisted into a scowl. I tried to greet her with a smile, but before I could even get a word out, she launched into a tirade. Her words hit me like a slap to the face. "How could you lie to me?" she demanded, her voice laced with venom. "You promised you'd wear my wedding dress." I stared at her, stunned. I never promised that. But she wouldn't listen. She ranted on, accusing me of being ungrateful, of disrespecting her family, of not being worthy of marrying her son. I felt my heart pounding, my hands shaking. This was the woman I'd tried so hard to please for 6 years, and here she was, tearing me down in my own home over a promise I never made. All I could think was, where is Jake? Why isn't he here standing up for me? Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and walked to my room, closing the door behind me like a scolded child. Even with the door shut, I could still hear her yelling. She finally stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Moments later, Jake walked into the room, looking unfazed. "What happened?" he asked, as if he hadn't heard his mother's yelling from wherever he'd been hiding. I explained everything, still reeling from the confrontation, expecting him to take my side, to comfort me. But instead, he started making excuses for his mom, explaining that she was just upset because, apparently, 6 years ago, I'd once mentioned that I liked her dress. I was dumbfounded. Sure, maybe I'd said something nice about her dress when we first met, maybe just to be polite. But there's a huge difference between complimenting someone's dress and promising to wear it on my wedding date. That night, I lay in bed, feeling a strange emptiness beside the man I was supposed to marry. It dawned on me that he would always put his mother's feelings above mine, that I would never come first. As I lay there, tears streaming down my face, I started to realize that maybe I was marrying someone who wasn't capable of standing up for me, someone who would always be his mother's little boy. When I woke up, I found my phone flooded with messages from my future mother-in-law. She was relentless, calling me every name under the sun, telling me that I wasn't good enough for her son, that I didn't deserve to marry him. I showed the text to Jake, hoping he'd finally understand just how toxic this situation was. But he barely looked at them, brushing it off with a shrug, saying, "She's just hurt that you don't want to wear her dress." I couldn't believe it. Hurt, I repeated, feeling my voice shake with anger. "She's attacking me, Jake. She's trying to tear us apart, and you're just sitting here, defending her." He sighed, avoiding my gaze. "She's my mom, okay? She just wants what's best for me." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about a dress. This was about respect, about having a partner who would stand by me no matter what. And suddenly I realized I didn't have that. I had spent 6 years with a man who would always put his mother's feelings above mine, who would never truly stand by me. The silence over the past few days gave me a lot of time to think, and my fiancé still hadn't shown up. The only thing he sent me was a text saying he'd stay away until I came to my senses. Well, here's the thing, I've come to my senses. I'm seriously reconsidering this entire relationship. If marrying him means marrying his mother too, I want no part of it. I wanted a husband, not a package deal with a controlling mother-in-law as a bonus. I spoke with my mom again, and she only confirmed what I already knew. My fiancé is acting like a childish, spineless mama's boy. Yesterday, the queen bee herself, my future mother-in-law, called me and insisted that we needed to talk. Foolishly, I agreed. I should have known better than to expect any kind of reasonable conversation from her. It's like expecting a shark to go vegetarian. It's just not going to happen. She started off by accusing me of going back on a promise I never even made. She actually said she was hurt by my actions, like she was the one who'd been wronged in all of this. Before I could get a word in, she made this grand statement saying she was willing to move past it if I wore her dress. How generous, right? Maybe I should build her a shrine or something to show my eternal gratitude for her forgiveness. But I shut that idea down immediately. I told her very clearly that it was my day, and I would wear what I wanted. Then, because I apparently love putting myself through more stress, I offered to wear something else of hers as a compromise. But no, that wasn't good enough for Her Majesty. It was her dress or nothing. Honestly, I'm surprised she didn't demand that I legally change my last name to hers while she was at it. Maybe I should just let her walk down the aisle instead of me. I tried one last time to explain that I wasn't comfortable wearing her dress, that I never promised to wear it, and even suggested she might be confusing me with one of my fiancé's ex-girlfriends. Let's be real, she probably thinks we're all the same, just a bunch of nameless future mothers of her grandkids. Well, that set her off. She completely lost it over the phone, calling me a liar, saying I was unworthy and, get this, a witch. Seriously, a witch? What is this, the 1500s? I'd had enough, so I hung up on her and blocked her number. Good riddance, as they say. But oh, that wasn't the end of it. My spineless fiancé texted me saying it wasn't fair for me to yell at his precious mommy about the dress. According to him, I was the one who blew up. Never mind that his mother was the one throwing insults and acting like a complete lunatic. In his mind, his mom could do no wrong, and I'm just some evil woman trying to take him away from her. I told him to meet me at our house, so we could talk face to face. But guess what? He refused, saying he'd come tomorrow. So here I am, waiting for him to find the guts to actually talk to me in person. I called a few of my friends to get their thoughts, and they were just as shocked as I was at how quickly everything had fallen apart. As the night wore on, I found myself sitting in the dark, staring at my engagement ring. It no longer felt like a symbol of love and commitment. Instead, it felt like a chain tying me to a future I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore. I took it off and set it on the nightstand. For the first time, I let myself really consider that this engagement might not end in a wedding after all. Well, the day of reckoning finally arrived. My fiancé actually showed up at our house, and I didn't waste a second. I laid into him about his childish behavior and let him know how hurt and angry I was at both him and his mom for trying to pressure me into wearing that hideous dress. He tried to interrupt, probably to defend himself, but I wasn't having it. I cut him off and told him straight up that this was about way more than a dress. It was about him being willing to throw away our relationship over a piece of fabric. Of course, he didn't like that. He had the nerve to say he was only standing up for what was right, as if his mother's ridiculous demands were somehow the morally correct stance in all of this. I wanted to ask him if he left his brain at his mother's house along with his backbone, but I held back. Instead, I calmly pointed out that the wedding dress is a huge part of the wedding day, and there was no way I'd wear something I wasn't comfortable with. Then I reminded him that if we were really going to get married, and at this point, that was a big if, he should be supporting me, not taking his mother's side over mine. That's when things got really heated. He looked furious, especially because I'd said if we get married instead of when. He started yelling, saying I was planning to cancel the whole wedding over a stupid dress and acting like it was all some kind of joke. Let me tell you, the only joke here was his behavior. I stood my ground and told him that this whole situation was making me question if I even wanted to marry him. And honestly, it was because if this is how he acts now, how is he going to behave when we're actually married? Right on cue, he tried to storm out again, his usual move whenever things get tough, but I wasn't letting him run away this time. I followed him, telling him we needed to talk this through, or I would end things right then and there. That's when it happened. He spun around and slapped me, like I was some child who had misbehaved, not the woman he was supposed to marry. I stood there, stunned, as he stormed out of the house and ran back to his mother. The sound of that slap echoed in my ears long after he was gone. I couldn't believe it had come to this. This was the man I thought I loved, the man I thought I knew, and he had just raised his hand to me. All over a dress, all because of his mother's feelings. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. This wasn't love. This wasn't a partnership. This was abuse, plain and simple. I called my sister right away, and she came over immediately. She helped me pack a bag, because there was no way I could stay in that house another night. That was it. No turning back. There's no way I'm marrying this abusive mama's boy. I texted him right after, telling him it was over. No discussion, no second chances. He'd shown his true colors, and they were uglier than his mother's old dress. This morning, I took action. I went to the police station and filed for a restraining order. It'll go to court soon, and I have all the evidence I need. I took photos of the mark on my cheek from where he slapped me, and I have video footage of him coming to and leaving the house. Let's see him try to talk his way out of this one. Filing for the restraining order was both empowering and heartbreaking. As for the wedding, I decided to turn lemons into lemonade. I'm using the venue to throw an early birthday party for myself, and instead of canceling the honeymoon trip, I'm taking my sister. At least I know she'll always have my back. I also took some advice and unblocked my ex and his mom. Big mistake. His mom immediately bombarded my phone with nasty messages. I had to mute them both to keep my sanity. The bitterness in her words was shocking. She accused me of ruining her son's life, called me a gold digger, and told me I was never good enough for her precious boy. I sent one final text to my ex, officially ending things and telling him exactly what I thought of him. He responded with excuses, begging for forgiveness, but you don't get to slap me and then ask for a second chance.